Thanks, Buhle. In the point of view, Operation Dudula, a group which describes itself using the tagline South Africa for South Africans First, it emerged around June of 2020. On its Facebook page, the group describes its mandate as removing illegal immigrants from our townships who are not even taxpayers. Over the past few months, the group has frequented foreign-owned shops in parts of Soweto and Alexandra townships, asking for owners to present documentation. Organization leader Vigilantism has said previously that the group operates as a peaceful demonstration in full cooperation with law enforcement agents. Now, Section 17 of the Constitution does provide that everyone has the right to peacefully assemble, demonstrate, picket, and to present petitions. The exercise of such rights shall take place peacefully and with regard to the rights of others. Operation Dudula, which presents itself as a resistance group that takes action, has come under fire and accused of vigilantism. Does the movement operate within the legal parameters of protests? Well, attorney at Right to Protest, Vigilantism Yokwe, joins us now to unpack this. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. Does this movement operate within the confines of the law?
Hi, may I get your name first? I prefer to refer to people with their names.
It's Mpho.
Or surname.
It's Mpho.
Hi, Mpho. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
I'm good too. Your question is, does the Operation Dudula movement operate within the legal parameters of protest laws?
Yes.
Basically. It is a very tricky question to answer because one has to first look at the right to protest itself as enshrined in the Constitution, your Section 17 right, and it clearly states there that everyone has the right to peacefully and unarmed to assemble, to demonstrate, and to picket, as well as to present petitions. And we also have our Enabling Act, which is your Regulation of Gatherings Act of 1993, which gives us guidelines as to how one should exercise that right. There has been in the past an issue pertaining to whether giving notice to your, for instance, in Johannesburg, to your MPD or to your security clusters, for that right, to exercise that right to protest is a mandatory occurrence which should happen from the protesters. And it has been declared that it is not necessary to give notice. However, they're not seeking petition, rather permission. They are giving notice so that they can get security detail into their protest. Mm-hmm. Now, to answer the question as to whether Operation Dudula is operating within the ambit of the law when they're exercising their right to protest, yes, they can protest, they can assemble, as long as they do it peacefully, as long as their intention or their goal is to get to the people to raise awareness about the certain issue or certain injustice they're fighting against. And that doesn't include breaking into people's houses, because that is an illegal act. And that doesn't include burning tires, because that constitutes public violence. Do you now understand the gray line between exercising your right to protest within the parameters of the law?
Absolutely. As you make mention, Vigilantism, of breaking into people's houses, we know that at the moment, Operation Dudula movement leader Vigilantism is behind bars, and one of the charges here is housebreaking and intimidation. And of course, then one would want to perhaps analyze the situation with the role of the police, because the police were present when all of this was happening. In fact, as we took the live visuals as Newzroom Afrika, we saw Nhlanhla saying that they are now going into this specific house in Soweto and Dobsonville, and he referred to the police as merely being there and not going into the house to conduct the search, with the allegations that the house that they eyeing or going into is an alleged drug den. What then is the role or the constitutional mandate of the police in such a scenario?
Police are their constitutional mandate, right, is to, as enshrined in the Constitution once again, is to combat, prevent. They also have a prevention, a duty, constitutional duty to prevent crime, and also to arrest those suspected of having committed a crime. Now, in this instance, this person is clearly saying that we are going there to conduct ABCD, that is to search for drugs, to break into or to get into the house of a civilian person. May I quickly charge my laptop? Apologies for that. Is clearly stating that he is going into a specific house and police are not going to do anything about it. Could one construe that to say police have failed in their powers to protect the rights of that specific person whose house was entered without his permission? Or did that person grant permission to begin with? Or the house was just left open? In that instance, if he is charged, then charged with an offense of housebreaking and theft, then police have done their part. But when it comes to preventing that from happening, remember, this person is inciting, is clearly saying that we are going there, which is police have a duty to prevent that from happening. They have a constitutional duty to prevent that from happening. But often than not, our police officers, or rather, we only get people to be arrested once the crime has been committed.
In this instance, Luvuyokazi, we perhaps explain what role the police were meant to play, in the sense that they may be perceived as not doing their bit to combat or prevent any sort of crime or intervene, as the community has been speaking about the allegations of the home being a drug den, and police are not intervening. What would be required before a police officer can also charge in and go and search the house? Perhaps that part needs to be clearly explained.
With police officers, with regards to searching their house, people's houses, they're guided by the Criminal Procedure Act, and it clearly requires them in instances to, if they receive information that there are certain drugs at a certain place and you are drug dealing there, and obviously those drugs are not about to be moved instantly. They cannot just storm into your house. There has to be search warrants obtained. They have to follow a certain procedure. There's section 205, if I'm not mistaken, of the criminal procedure, which gives them authority to actually apply for a search warrant before they can come to your house. Because remember, as a person, as a citizen, as a person so alleged to be committing an offense at my residence, I have rights as well. I have right to privacy. I also have rights as human rights as a person. So the minute police hear information that there are drugs being sold at a specific house, it doesn't mean that they have to kick doors and do that, because remember, I have rights. They also have to operate within the ambit of the law. So if the community is alleging that the police were not taking action, was the information presented to the police? Did they have reasonable information to say we are going for a warrant, we're going to apply for a warrant to go search the specific house? Because what we expect as society is that police should just ignore the law. But at the end of the day, those cases still have to be prosecuted. And if they don't follow the procedure, chances are that when it gets to court, it becomes a nonsensical case which cannot be proven by the state. And the prosecutor cannot put that case on the roll. And it looks as if that the law does not work. But obviously, there is procedure in place. And if such procedure is not followed, then it becomes a non-existing case. Do you understand what I mean? So we can't report that drugs are being sold at specifically my house, and then you expect police to be there. Unless the drugs are suspected to be moved, there is a reasonable suspicion that for instance, I'm about to move these illegal drugs to a different place, then they can act on that information. But if I'm operating there, I'm dealing there, then there's no urgency on them to come and kick doors at my house. And even then, they still have to ensure that they protect my rights, at the same time they follow procedure.
In following procedure, we also saw, Operation Dudula being one of the movements. Over the past few months, the group frequenting foreign-owned shops in townships, wanting to find out whether or not the foreign nationals are documented or undocumented. What sort of legal framework should be considered in that instance?
There is a Department of Home Affairs and Immigrations dealing with whether a person is foreign or not. Remember, we can't take law into our hands as citizens. We can raise awareness there when people are not, when authorities are not doing their part. We can protest to those authorities for them to take action and give them a memorandum, because the whole point of us protesting as citizens is to actually challenge, bring to question the authorities to do their part, because now we're taking law into our own hands, and it's not even covered by the civilians' arrest, and we go and invade someone else's privacy. We go and entrench on their rights and violate their rights, because they have rights. They are protected by the same law we're protected by. So for me to actually feel injustice and go take law into my own hands, it's actually wrong. I am of the view that authorities should have been involved in that, to actually ensure that action is taken, and it is taken now, in order to ensure that illegal immigrants are dealt with in accordance with the law, but not us as citizens going out there in a scourge and try to take their property, to do whatever is being done to them. Do you understand where I'm going?
Very much so. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to have to leave it there. Attorney at Right to Protest, Luvuyokazi Yokwe, speaking to some of the dynamics around protests that we've seen. Of course, we saw boiling tensions that have, between locals and foreign nationals in the country over the recent months.